Memorial Day is a day to remember our fallen soldiers and look on to how they protected our country.
But for many military, it could be the memories of those loved ones lost and knowing how to deal with grief bursts. It's very important. So joining us now is Executive Director of the Children's Grief Center of New Mexico, Jade Richardson Bach. Thank you for joining us.
Jade, good to see you. Thanks for being here. So, unfortunately, a lot of those that have passed in the military are very young. We've lost a lot of young people, and of course, they have young families. So how do we deal with this? How do we deal with young, growing families in such a time of tragedy?
That's a good question. Fred Rogers said, if it's mentionable, it's manageable. And so we encourage young families to talk about what happened to their loved one and that they're no longer here with us.
Okay. Now, we mentioned grief bursts, but what are those?
You know, holidays, special days, anniversaries, birthdays, events like Memorial Day can bring up what we call grief bursts. You feel like you're doing fine, you've been going about your life, things have been getting better, you're finding a new way to be normal, and then all of a sudden it hurts again. Something brings up the memory that your person is gone and your family is different. And that can make adults and children feel like, oh, something must be wrong with me. I thought I was doing really well, and now I feel kind of like I'm back at square one. But that's a grief burst, and it's pretty quick.
Okay.
So it's important to remember that burst, I think, is an important key word there. So, obviously adults, we work through it, in our own certain ways, but kids, sometimes the children of those left behind can be very difficult to communicate with them effectively. So how do we do it?
Kids are magical thinkers, and they can often blame themselves for something that's gone wrong in their family. I've heard 6th grade girls say things like, if I'd only gotten better grades, then my dad wouldn't have had that heart attack.
Wow.
And so it's really important that the adults in their lives communicate to them clearly and compassionately that sometimes bad things happen, and it doesn't mean that we're a bad person.
Right.
Just sometimes things happen in our families, but we can come together and we can find a way to get through it.
So being
Now-
open and communicating with them, very important.
And reminding them that it's not their fault.
Yeah.
Even something as what might be clear to us as our loved one died in service to his country. For a very young child, he might think, well, if I'd been a better kid, then my daddy would still be here.
Now, if somebody wants some resources, wants some additional help, how can they find that?
Well, there's a lot of programs. There's about 300 programs nationally that are dedicated to supporting grieving kids. Here in central New Mexico, we have the Children's Grief Center, and we have support groups. We have a summer camp program. We also maintain a large collection, we call it our Losing Library, of books, DVDs, and other resources related to grief and loss. Our mission is to help families navigate the death of a loved one.
Okay.
Very important stuff. And again, unfortunately here on Memorial Day, talking about this, but that's part of what we do on this day is reflect on those and help those that have lost.
Yes, and remembering is important.
Yeah.
And when we can remember together as a family and tell stories together as a family, we keep the memory of our loved one alive in our hearts.
You bet. Jay, thank you so much for coming
Thank
in.
you.
And again,
Thank
folks,
you.
for more information, head over to CASA.com. And again, thank you for all the service that you do for our servicemen and women's families.
It's an honor.
Yeah, absolutely.